and everybody that went for that interpretation looked foolish. The current, what is that saying? Those who don't learn from history are condemned to what? Repeat it. The current generation of Bible teachers, and yes, I will mention someone, Amir Tsarfati, is making this identical error. I like Amir Tsarfati. I like his prophecy updates. But he is starting once again with the wrong starting point because he's found a loophole. The loophole is Psalm 90, verse 10, which says what? As for the days of our life, they contain 70 years, or if due to strength, 80 years. Aha! A generation is 70 to 80 years. So let's start with 70 years from 1948. Well, there's a problem there because that takes us to 2018. And what year is it? 2020. Oh, here's what we'll do. Let's start in 1967. And let's go 70 years into the future. That's workable because that takes us to which year? 2037. Whew, we're going to make it. And that's what people are teaching. They're teaching the second coming of Christ has to happen in the year 2037, starting in 1967. The problem is that date is going to come and go if the Lord tarries. If that date comes and goes, they've got another loophole. Because Psalm 90 verse 10 doesn't just say 70 years, it says what? 80 years. So let's start in 1948 and go 80 years into the future. That will work. That takes us to 2028. Or let's start in 1967 and go 80 years into the future. And that takes us to 2047. And all of these people, they may not give you that ironclad of a date, but they're all saying, we are the terminal generation. By the way, I hope we are. I just can't stand up in front of an audience and tell people we are definitely the terminal generation. I pray for it. But you can't use the Bible to develop some kind of calculation from that. Particularly, you can't use verse 34 and start in 1948 and go to 70 years into the future. 1967, go 80 years into the future. You can't do that because all of these systems are built on the wrong starting point. They are built on the wrong terminus a quo. Because Jesus, when he makes these statements, is not talking about the birth of the nation during the church age. If you think he is talking about the birth of the nation of Israel during the church age, you will be sidelined and confused and discredited, ultimately, if the Lord tarries, by all of these crazy date-setting schemes. The proper terminus a quo is not anything related to the church age because Christ is not talking about the church age here. He's talking about a particular generation of Jews in the tribulation period who just saw their temple desecrated. That's your terminus a quo. That's your starting point. That's the generation to which Jesus made this promise. This generation will not pass away. Zero to do with 1948. Zero to do with 1967. Zero to do with Psalm 90 verse 10. Everything to do with the generation of Jews in the tribulation period that just saw the beast or the Antichrist desecrate their temple, which is the key sign in this whole discourse. That's why I had you underline all these things. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. What is all these things? Don't rip that out of context. keep the context that we've been talking about, and you'll see very clearly it's talking about a specific generation of Israelis in the second half of the tribulation period. The fig tree being the nation of Israel, that's fine. But this is more than just the rebirth of a nation. This is a specific generation of Jews that is seeing all of these things described. The dominant sign being the desecration of the temple. Micah 4 and verse 4 analogizes Israel to the fig tree. So there's no problem seeing Hebrew things here, Jewish things here. The problem is, don't pick a generation pre-rapture, because that's not what this is speaking of. Pick as your starting point the prophecy that that generation will not disappear until all of these things take place. Pick the generation that he's speaking of, the generation of Jews that watches the temple desecrated. Now, having said that, go back to Matthew 23 for a minute.